I found a place where hearts collide. No shadows linger, nowhere to hide. Your touch so tender, your soul so bright. You're the fire burning through my night. Love so pure, it can't be denied. Through the storms, we'll always glide. Undefiled, it's a sacred tie. You're my truth, my heart's guide. Whispers in the dark, your voice so clear. It calms the chaos, erases fear. Every beat of you, it pulls me near. A love unbroken, crystal and sheer. Love so pure, it can't be denied. Through the storms, we'll always glide. Undefiled, it's a sacred tie. You're my truth, my heart's guide.
What's going on, fam? We are here live and direct back. I want to say for the first time, like Ludacris. I'm AC,
I'm Ivy.
and this is Undefiled, our podcast on everything concerning marriage and marital issues. It's been a long time,
A
baby.
long time.
It's been a long time. I think the last time we actually did an official episode, we wasn't even in this house.
We wasn't.
So it's been,
Oh, it's been some years.
yeah, it's been some years since we've done an official podcast episode, man. But we wanted to take some time to get some things together, get things situated. A lot has happened since the
lot.
last episode. I don't even remember what the title of the last
Me-
episode. That's how long it's been.
Me either, baby.
I know we were in the middle of our second season, which we were calling Marriage Killers. We were in the midst of that. And we started dealing with different things. Basically, it was that season was about having different episodes about different topics that could be a killer to your marriage or have issues in your marriage. And along the way, one of the topics that we intended to discuss, and we're actually going to discuss that today, was the concept of blended family. So I know my wife has really been passionate about this one.
I have. Only because me personally, I feel like if you are in a blended family, you should be able to talk about your struggles in being in a blended family. And there's some other couples who are, I guess they have children together, so they don't have a blended family, but they speak on blended families, but they really don't know the in depth of what a blended family is and the struggles that we go through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's almost like, you can kind of sympathize in a way with what a person deals with, but if you're not in it, then you all the time you don't get the full details to get the
Right.
true insight of the feelings, the emotions, the challenges. And that's one of the things that wanted us to spark this conversation on tonight. We wanted to be able to talk about something because we have a blended family.
Yes, we do.
Whether we're successful in that or not, that's up to the viewer. But we do have one. And I wanted to start by first, I guess, kind of laying the foundation, because if this is your first time ever hearing that concept, you might be wondering, okay, what exactly is a blended family, right? And so in just plain English, the simplest way to define it is the concept of when, let's just say, the father has children outside of the marriage, not while he's married, but
Before marriage.
Before marriage, right? So basically, in our situation, I had 2 kids before I met my wife. My wife had 2 kids before she met me. So when we married, that family became blended because her children that she had before the marriage, and my children I had before the marriage, is what made the family blended. Another reason why those is considered a blended family is because even though she became stepmom, in the legal sense, I became stepfather in the legal sense. Her sons still had their father. My sons still had their mom. And so most people don't like to understand it or look at it from this concept, but even though me and the mom are no longer together, we have no type of romantic relationship. By definition, she is still the mother of those children, and I'm the father of those children, which makes that a family. And in the same sense, my wife and her children's father have no romantic relationship, but they're still the father of their children, and she's still the mother, and that's a family. And so, even if we're not romantically together, those individuals now have some level of insight, some level of, what's the word I want to use? Not necessarily just insight, but the actions that they take. All of these things can affect the family that we're trying to build, and that's what makes it blended. Did I do good?
You did.
Did I struggle a little bit?
It's a lot, but you did good.
All right.
You
Like,
did
so
good.
if I want to say, with that, right? There's a lot of different challenges that you can deal with blended family. What's one of the things, I guess, for you, that's one of the first issues that come to mind when you think about starting up or trying to build a blended family?
I would say, well, I will go with one of the issues that we had. One of the issues that we had in trying to blend our families together is, I guess, the issue we ran into is with their mom and my kid's father. And I guess they didn't, I guess, so to speak, agree or didn't like the marriage, so to speak. I'm not sure what was the issue, but there's just getting them trying to recognize that it's no more of them, but it's me and my husband.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is not necessarily that their mom and, as far as my son's mom and her son's dad, they had an issue, but it was saying individually, my son's mom, we found out had an issue with us getting married. Then her son's father also kind of had similar issues, and what do those issues look like on a broad spectrum? It can be so many different things.
Yeah.
But they do play some type of weight when you're trying to build a new relationship. And for us individually, a lot of it was just unnecessary. I don't want to say drama, because it wasn't that it was a lot of drama, but
It was a lot of drama.
it wasn't a whole lot of
It
drama.
was a lot of drama.
It wasn't a whole lot
It
of
was a
drama.
lot of drama.
Okay, I guess it's based off perception, but I guess in my opinion, I've seen crazy. And to me, it wasn't as crazy as it could have been, but it was crazier than what we wanted it to be.
Right.
And that's kind of one of the things when you're thinking about a blended family. You can't control how the other party is going to respond
Right.
or react. You can only react to their reaction, and a lot of times that plays a part in how do you move forward. So the question becomes, okay, in our example, what were we supposed to do now that we wanted to move on, we wanted to have a life, and this person that clearly we already made a decision that what we have isn't working,
Right.
and we're trying to move on and do something better. They're taking the issue, for whatever the reason could be, with us moving on. How do you address that? How do you, put things in place to safeguard it? And for us, it created a lot of issues because now we're trying to look at, is it worth us pressing beyond this point because of the chaos it created?
And I will also say, now mind you, in the midst of being married, we are still learning how to be married. So with us learning how to become one, when we have other outsiders having issues, was also one of our struggles too. Because like I said, we're still learning how to become one, let alone having outsiders telling us how we should parent our kids, so to speak.
Right. So I'm learning her as a spouse. I'm learning her issues, her situations. I'm learning how she parents,
Right.
right? Because we parented different, because we grew up in separate households, had separate upbringings. That's the word I'm looking for. But just, having those experiences. So we're trying to build something. And on top of what we're trying to build, we're also learning, okay, there's parts of you I didn't know. And on top of what I didn't know about you, there's also this other influence that's speaking in your ear, trying to convince you, not to do things the way I want it done. And then I got influences in my ear and basically dictating how our house should look. And we're trying to bring about a peace. And that's not even dealing with, there's other issues, like, so they're not only speaking in our ears, but they're speaking in the ears of our children.
Yeah. Yeah. And that affected our household as well because, like my husband said, we're trying to parent in our household, but we have the other parent speaking to the children and trying to twist words and twist feelings and emotions, the kids, and they're going to listen to their parent.
Right. Because
That's just how
daddy
it
can do no
goes.
wrong, mama can do no wrong.
Right.
And I want to say this because it's not, first let me say this. We're not saying this like her children's father so bad or my children's mom so bad. That's not the case. They're individuals, they're people, and we're well beyond what we were when we first got started. So,
Right.
um, but I do want to say that there are people who have way more worse scenarios and situations than ours.
Mm-hmm.
Because the truth of the matter is, like, if the person is an immature person and they're the third party, they can create a level of chaos that can affect your family in such a degree. So when we talk about negative things being placed inside the minds of children, there are individuals who are trying to have a blended family, and the mom that's outside of that family is using the children as a weapon
Right.
against the father. So they're putting things in the mind, in the heart of the children about, your father left us for the new wife.
Mm-hmm.
Your father abandoned you. He gives them, and especially if you have children, that
Mm-hmm.
creates another dynamic because now it would in my sense, right? So with me being a father, oftentimes the common denominator is if a father and a mother separate, the children usually stay with the mom. The father has, start over, and he gets like partial visitation. Well, one of the struggles that begins to come up is that children oftentimes feel like if you start over as a father with children that are in home, then the children who are not as in home feel neglected.
Mm-hmm.
And that doubles down and becomes worse if you have a third party parent that's speaking negatively,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So that's one of the things that makes a blended family kind of hard.
Because once we began to start having or building, I won't say our family, but having children together, one of the issues came up, just being transparent. I guess they didn't like the fact that we started having children because they felt like they were being replaced when that wasn't true. But when you're a child, you think as a child. And if you have an outside party talking to you, you're going to believe what's being told. But again, that wasn't the case, but that's just how they thought once we started having kids and they start seeing daddy has been the bad guy because daddy's not with mom and daddy has his other wife and daddy don't want us. It was just a lot that came with us starting or having kids of our own.
Yeah, and even on your end, I think you even got to the point with because your situation is unique with your son Trey. I don't know if you cool with us going there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because it's not that it's a bad thing, but I just wanted to make sure. And that's funny me asking that on camera, right? But with your situation with Trey, we're not we're not currently raising him full time in the house. We're sharing, in a way, we're sharing custody with your dad because he never really had a son. So raising Trey was a benefit to him, and he's been a blessing in cultivating him, maturing him. But one of the reasons why, and I'll be transparent and say this, it's because in us originally blending the family, my initial responses to Trey when we first got together and were building our family was at a place where you didn't trust me with Trey.
I did
Like
not.
let's unpack that a little bit.
I did not trust him only because Trey never was around any other man besides my dad and his dad. So when I got married, he came around and it was just like, I don't know you. I don't want you around Trey. And
What do you mean you don't know me? You married me.
I mean, I knew you, but we got married fast though.
So that's my fault?
It's our fault. We got married fast, but at the same time, I'm still getting to know him. And here comes my baby boy, and I have to introduce him to this. It wasn't a stranger, but to my husband.
But you felt like I was a stranger.
Yeah, because
Wow.
in a sense, because you didn't know Trey.
Yeah.
Trey didn't know you. So I felt deep down inside that you wasn't going to treat Trey like your son. You was going to treat him differently. You wasn't
Yeah.
going to love him
The way I
Like,
love her.
yeah.
And see, I'm glad we pulled that out because first of all, that's my first time hearing that. That is. You have never told me that before. The only thing you ever told me is you ain't treat him right, but you never told you never told me like I gotta settle on that for a minute because that was like I don't think you realize the weight of what you just said. But you was like, I felt like I was introducing my son to a stranger. But you married me, right? But you still saw me as a stranger when it came to your child. And that's a concept of blended family that we really have to kind of lay out on the table. It's like at the end of the day, basically what you just said without saying it was I was good enough to be married to, but not good enough to parent with.
Mm, that's good.
And
Ooh.
but and so when you think about blending families, like even when you think about marriage, like how often like it shows that sometimes we enter into marriage with a selfish mind state. Like you said, you when you thought about marrying me, you was like, okay, he's good to me. And didn't even look, and it could have just been you, because like you said, we got married fast and we were young. Didn't even think in along the lines of, but is he good for my son?
Right.
Is he good? And when it came down, you felt like, well, he's not good for my son, but there's an option, and that's how that thing blew about. Well, I hope that you don't still feel that way.
No, I don't. No, no. You have proven me wrong. He is a good, I don't like to call it step, but he is a good dad to Trey. He's been there, basketball games, taking them distant play, back and forth, I should say. Teach him how to change tires. My dad also too. I'm not going to leave him out. He has played a major part in Trey's life as well. So I can really say that Trey is blessed to have you, my dad, and also his dad in his life. So I don't feel that way because you have proven me wrong. He is a good dad to Trey. He really is.
But I'll be honest though, and I appreciate you saying that. But I know that there was some level of responsibility on my end that led to that level of distrust. I think it was one of my first encounters with Trey was, and I have a tendency, and I shared this when I do my ER sessions with through the ministry that we're a part of. But I tell them that my family has a history of like anger issues, and you know this now, but you didn't know it then, right? I never was. Oh, I'm not a. It's not that I'm violent. It's not that I have a aggressive nature as far as being violent or verbally abusive, but I can be short tempered. And I think in one of the first interactions with Trey when he was very, very young, I think he kind of jumped on me and I didn't know that was him or something like that. And my reaction was like I jerked a little bit, but then, I tried to calm down, but that was all you needed to see. And Mama Bear, was done with me. And but I think, like, looking back, like, yeah, you smiling now, but it wasn't no smile.
It was not, because it went along the lines of that. And also, when we was at the house, Trey wanted to watch TV, and you was watching TV. And Trey was just like, hey, see, can I look at TV? Can I look at TV? And you threw the remote. You was like, here, Trey. And I was just like, wait, here, Trey. Don't throw the remote at my baby. And
Nah, I ain't throw the remote.
I mean, you didn't throw it, but you just kind of tossed it. But in my mind, he threw it.
Just over-exaggerated.
But like I said, in my mind, he threw it. And I kind of like...
But that traumatized you.
It did.
It traumatized you.
And from there on, I was just like...
He's not going... Like, he treats me well, but I don't like... And you know what? I don't fault you for that because that's actually a wise decision to make, right? If you don't trust a person around your child, you don't allow them to be around. So it's not that you made the wrong decisions, but it also... When you finally... Because for a while, you never told me. Right? You just made the decision. We never had... I would always ask you, like, why...
I kept Trey from
you. Yeah.
Because like you said, Trey stays with my dad. When I first got married, my dad doesn't have any boys. So when I first got married, he was like, oh, you ain't taking my child? I'm like, he's not your child. He's mine. But he never had a son. So he already got attached to Trey. He was raising Trey as his own. So the incident that we was talking about, I was just like, you're not going to be around Trey anymore. You're not. I go and see Trey, but you're not going to be around him.
And I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, she never, like, when I said she never told me, there was no conversation about it. Like, it was just like, oh, he good. I'm like, what do you mean good? Like, You know what I mean?
I
Like
kept my boy away from him.
she did. She really did.
And it wasn't, now that I'm looking back on it, it wasn't that serious, but in that moment, because I didn't know him good enough or well enough, it was serious in that moment to me.
Yeah, and again I say like we having this conversation for the first time in real time in front of y'all, but it's like I don't fault you for it. I don't fault you for protecting your child. I fault myself for putting you at a place where you felt like you needed to protect them from me. But I can also say the fault that you had was that you didn't make me aware of the fact that I made you feel that way.
Right.
So I could never address it. Because the moment that we finally had that conversation, which was years later, not no a year later. I mean, I think Trey was almost a teenager before we finally had the conversation where she explained to me the way that she felt. So she hid it for years. But I was able to finally, one, apologize, and two, readdress and correct behavior. Now, after those moments, you notice that she didn't say this moment and this moment and this moment because it wasn't something that a behavior that I kept having.
Right.
But because she never put it on Front Street, even though I never did anything again, it still didn't do anything to the trauma. And I think that's another piece of the puzzle. I wasn't able to really help heal her from that trauma that initially started until I recognized, one, that it was there. And then I could say, okay, so that's what it is. You have a trust issue, not for how I'm treating him, but how I treated him when we first met.
And then again, we were still learning how to communicate. I know nothing about communicating in the marriage, telling him how I felt. I didn't know, so I didn't tell him. I just kept it to myself and hopefully he figured it out.
Yeah. I want to, before we go to the next thing, I want to go back to that because I think this will be good for someone who's trying to do a blended family, especially a woman out there who's got children, because it's just so much that I'm hearing for the first time. But so that safety net that you felt, right? That mama bear protection, like when you got to that point of feeling like, I don't know if I could trust him because I don't know if you're going to love my child like your own. What was it that kind of helped you to start seeing that it was possible? Like in me, like how long did it take? Was it not until we had that conversation, like I just said, or was it a little bit sooner? Like, how long did it take for you to start thinking, okay, I can trust him with Trey?
Well, like you stated before, it wasn't like, you kept that behavior up. It was just a one-time thing, but in my mind, it was one and done. But you actually put forth effort into being in his life. You actually put forth effort in spending time with him, talking with him. And so in me seeing that, I'm like, okay, why is he talking to him? Why is he taking my child to the store? So even with you taking him to the store, I'm still feeling kind of scared because I'm like, you got my baby. What are you saying to him? Like, I'm still trying to let my guard down just a little bit, but it was still kind of hard.
Yeah.
So over time, I once I saw you, even showing up to the games and showing him how to change tires and showing him how to, just do basic life skills. I'm like, okay, well maybe it was a little bit, he may like him a little bit. Even though I knew you loved him, I had to put in my mind, I had to view you differently because I saw the effort that you was putting in to be there for him and to be that dad figure in his life. So he won't look at you. To be honest with you, I don't think Trey never looked at you as a bad guy. Like, he never looked at you as, you taking my mom away from me. He never did. As I'm just thinking back, like, Trey is always, now don't get me wrong, he had his times to where he was, because he was a child. He's aggravated, he's playful. But I don't think he really had y'all really had any kind of falling out, or he's really being disrespectful, or just, just really piss you off. To that degree, now that I'm thinking about it, he never really saw you in that way as far as, like, this is somebody that I can't trust.
And I thank God for that because there are a lot of things that I do differently than you all do. Like you and your parents, y'all have a way that y'all raise Trey. And that's one of the things I told you. Even when I realized that you had trust issues, and I'm not saying this to sound chauvinistic, but you know me, and you know I'm not being funny when I say this. But when it comes to certain rules, certain things, certain principles, I'm just gonna be hard about it, and there ain't no changing it.
Right.
And I told you all the time, I was like, y'all could do whatever y'all want to do with Trey, but when he come to my house, my rules. And certain things, like I remember when I first met Trey, y'all had, what was his diet?
I don't
It
know.
was like, no, you know.
I'm gonna put a pin in that because when you said that, if I can be honest, that was that mama bear coming out because he was like, Trey, come over here. It's my house. This is my rules. This is my this. Is my that. And I'm like, hold up. He's still my son now. You ain't finna be coming for him by every little thing. But even in that, when Trey came over, it was no clashing.
Mm-mm.
When he asked Trey to do something, he did it. When he asked Trey, this is all you gonna eat, because we talking about the diet thing. Trey had a funny diet, and me and my sibling and my mom, whenever he wanted some fast food, we'll go get it. Some type of way we'll come up with the money and he'll go get it. But when he came here, my husband was like, we not finna be going out to go get this boy no McDonald's. He gonna eat what's cooked. I'm like, he don't eat that. And he was like, he gonna eat what's cooked. But I mean, he did, because now his appetite is more open to.
And who did it?
You did it.
Who got his appetite open?
You did.
'Cause all the stuff he didn't eat. No, we ain't gonna skip over that. We ain't gonna just glaze over that. I'm gonna dig into this because because it's like you said. The mama bear was like, who you talk to? I know what my child don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
I know what my child don't like. And then putting that type of pressure on the child, in front of the mom, you abusing them, you taking them, you mistreating them. Went through all that, right? And so I'm gonna tell y'all how I got the permission to prove that I could be a help to Trey. What happened was we were at your people house, and y'all were gone. I think it was just me, Trey, and I can't think of who else, but I know it wasn't too many people there. And he got hungry, and I think I was cooking meatloaf, and Trey don't eat meatloaf. Trey don't eat meatloaf. I said okay. I said he gonna eat my meatloaf. I cooked it, cut it up. I said go ahead, try a piece. I don't eat that. I said I didn't ask you what you eat. I said try a piece. He chewed it. He's like, that's kind of good. I said, I know it's good. I said, now that's what you're going to eat today. And from that moment on, I had him trying everything I cooked. And now his palate done got better. He eats more food. And I showed it to them. I said, you said that boy don't eat that. He eating it. How you got him to eat this? I said, I made him eat it. Quiet is kept now. It's quiet in the church. It's quiet in the church. Had to do it when they wasn't there. Because if I was there when they were there, they would have had a fit. You doing him so wrong. Oh, you hurting my baby. But these are things that you go through with blended families. We don't want to get off topic.
Right.
We don't want to get off topic.
Yeah, so that was our end as far as Trey's concerned in your relationship with Trey. And still, they still have a good relationship. Still teaching them stuff when he comes over. Whatever he asks Trey, he'll do. So it's still a good relationship. So I really do thank God for y'all's relationship.
And I thank God too that I was able to find a way to be a part. And I want to say that, and then we'll flip the tables and flip on the boards a little bit. But that was one of the things, like you said, you saw me taking effort and initiative. So I want to make sure we don't gloss over the fact that with us being married, my wife put up a guard with Trey. She was intending to keep him out of my life, keep him out for the sake of protecting him. And it was my responsibility as a man to not look at that as a free pass to not be in his life. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I said no. When I married her, I married everything that came with her, and that included all of her children. And so even though she's trying her best to not let me have access, I have legal permission by the state and by God to be in his life and to make sure I make some level of deposit. And I saw areas where I could be beneficial, and without disrespecting them and without disrespecting Trey, I was able to do that. And that's important because it wasn't about in demanding my authority and forcing my way, but I found ways that Trey was willing to listen. And that's the parts I played. Where his guard was up, I respected that he had other people. But where he was willing to receive me, that's the parts I played. And as I played those parts, he started trusting me more and more so to be able to guide him. And I want to say that to whoever's listening, especially the men out there, if you're listening to this podcast, like, you know, if you're in a situation where you got a blended family, you got a son that not yours, you got a daughter that's not yours, you're trying to figure out how do I parent them? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, you don't have permission to not try. That's your responsibility because you married their mom. You took the responsibility of saying that I'm gonna position myself to be in their life, and you don't get the excuse of not trying just because it's hard.
Right.
But I want to say too, so that's kind of your perspective with Trey. With our perspective, and we talked about Khalil on the previous episode. So if you want to know about Khalil, you can go back and watch that episode. We shared that. But as far as the twins, you know, there was some level of distrust there too. And we've had this conversation about how it was the same thing. It was kind of like, can I trust her to love the twins the way she loves her children? Because if I could be honest, you didn't at first.
If I can be honest, I'm not gonna even, you know. I'm not gonna say I didn't love them.
No, I didn't say you didn't love them, but it definitely wasn't on the same level.
It definitely was not. It definitely was not. I did love them, but it was not on the same level. Was I right? No, but you know, I don't even say well, I can say reminisce.
Mm-hmm.
As we go back, it was a lot of things that took place in that whole scenario that made it hard for me to see them like I see Trey. Yeah. It was a lot. Like we said before, because they had their boys, they're gonna love their mom. I get that. You're supposed to love your mom. They had their mom in their ear with a lot of things that was untrue about me. They believed it, okay, and they came and took it and brought it into our home, which caused a lot of ups and downs and confusion.
Why you look directly at my eyes when you said confused? Like I'm the one confused.
it was a lot.
Yeah, but I'm not the confused one. I don't. The confusion was in the house. It wasn't in AC. Like don't make people think it was me.
It wasn't in you, but you had your struggles too with them. You did.
My biggest struggle was, and we can say it because I've shared the testimony so many different times in so many different ways. But the biggest struggle was, regardless of what a test said and regardless of what, you know, transpired with that, I honestly believed in my heart, like, you know, I'm here because I want to be here, not because I have to be with them. You know, they may not be blood, but they're mine. Mm-hmm. And you struggle with that concept, and you know, your thing was, it's not that, you know, I don't factor you being there. Your struggle was, if you don't have to do it, and we're dealing with this chaos, like why?
I did.
That was your biggest issue.
That was my struggle. Because like you said, I'm pretty sure majority of the people know the situation between him and the twins. Did you want to?
I mean, we could. I mean, it's we like I said, it's been talked about. So basically, took a test came back saying that I wasn't the father. That was when they were 3 years old, but I just could not walk away because I just didn't see nobody else that would step up. Like, and you know, I've had the conversation with their mom, and you know, we talked about who or whatever, and that never came of that. I'm not trying to take place of their biological in any way, but it was just I didn't feel I struggled with leaving a void there. Mm-hmm. That was my thing. I was like, you know, I don't want to walk away from them, and they need something. They need some type of something. And the best I could be is what I'm willing to do. And just because I stayed in that position because this is way back when they were 3. They're 17 now. So, you know, 16, 13, like by that time they're mine. You know, I don't even think about the test no more. But because I was open and honest with my wife, like her thing wasn't so much, she came into it not really understanding how much I loved them and how much I saw them as mine. She just came into them in a situation that was like, I understand, you know, you want to be nice, but if this is what you found out, like, why are you allowing yourself to go through these things?
I had a time knowing that my husband stayed to parent these, well, at the time they were babies,
Yeah,
young
because they were
kids,
like
to
4.
parent these children, and we're having so much stuff going on in my mind, I couldn't fathom, like, why are you still here? Now, to me, now, I see why. Now they're about to be grown, they're 17, and they need a father. They need guidance. They need to know what it is, how to be a man, what to do. They don't have that. So if he would have walked away, who know, the streets might have, I don't know what they're doing. But you know what I'm saying? The
Yeah,
streets would have
yeah.
been, raising them, and that wouldn't have been good. That's how I think now. But back then it was hard because, like I said, it was so much going on. So I'm like, what is your problem? Like, why are you here?
And it was
Like,
just that, like that. That's how it was. I want you to
like,
understand,
what
like
are you doing?
she's going back
Like,
to that place right now.
yeah, because it was just so much, like I said, because they had so much in their ear at a young age telling them, because I'm not sure, well, I am sure, their mom didn't, quote unquote, like the fact that he moved on.
She
Or didn't, I felt like she didn't want you, but she didn't want you with nobody else.
and that happens, And at that moment, it's not like that now.
No, it's not like
It's
that
not like that
now.
now. But at that moment, I think that's what it was. I think it was because, like, they had just turned 4, so and of course I found out when they were 3, so that's fresh off of that situation. Um, and it was a lot of different things that transpired, like just different things. And the reason why we're saying different things and not going into detail is because we've recognized that regardless of what took place in the past, what we've built now isn't worth damaging, right? So we don't. That's why we're saying it the way we're saying it, because
We also saying it just to kind of safeguard the situation and not trying to take it there, but it it was a lot that it took much prayer.
we fine. We fine. What are you doing? Yeah,
It took much prayer. He said we was fine. I don't know, in his mind, I don't know what he was thinking, but I feel like I was going through hell and hot water with the whole situation. Like I said, I thank God where it is now, because it's nowhere near where it was.
I,
But in that time, it felt like,
but like like you said, the reason why was because it was like you didn't feel a purpose behind it. It didn't make
that's
sense,
true.
So that's why I was so offensive. It was like, we don't have to go through this. We don't
That's
have to
true.
deal with this. We don't. And then it was like, and I want to put this too because this is important. You had trust issues, major trust issues, and I mean to the point like she could have a password on her phone and I couldn't. If I had a password in my phone, I was doing something wrong.
What I got to do with the blended
That's
family?
that we are making a point here.
What that got to do with blended?
Because your trust issues also played in a part because, okay, you didn't just, it wasn't so much that you had a problem with me raising these children, but if I raise these children, I'm still connected to this woman. And me being still connected to this woman, but you got trust issues, here's the reality, right? Your baby mama, your baby daddy, like, let's just put the terms on the table, right? That's how you would call them outside of a formal. That's somebody who you were with. That's somebody who you were attracted to. You're attracted to enough to sleep with, to have children with, right? So even though y'all are not in a relationship, I'm just supposed to believe that there's no type of connection. Like, nobody believes that, right?
Right.
We just trust that you've had matured to a point where you're not going to cross those boundaries. Right. But if you're a person with trust issues, then you don't have that.
And I would say, I really do thank God for my husband, because in me having those trust issues, he never gave me a reason not to trust him. I came up with reasons in my head to not trust him, because you know how we get. We put scenarios together, and we be putting 2 and 4 together, be trying to come up with something. But he never gave me a reason not to trust him. Like, even when he said with the password, even though I had one and he didn't, I was always able to look through his phone he didn't hide anything. He didn't go outside to talk. Well,
You were doing so good. You were doing, just stay in your vein.
well,
Don't, just keep, what are you doing? Don't
well,
think about
because I stopped because I remembered that
Oh
he
my
did go
goodness.
outside
Lord, don't bring it back to remember now.
and talk to her, but I followed him.
You did follow me.
That's trust thing.
You followed me. You stalked me. You talking about follow me.
So when I did follow, because I'm like, hold up, all right, why you gotta talk outside? But
I do that with every conversation.
yeah, he does. He does. Even if I call him and he's inside, he'll walk outside. Or if he's talking to one of his friends, he'll step outside. So and I didn't know that because we're still young in marriage. We still learning one another. But it triggered when she called and he walked outside.
Oh, you hiding something.
Yeah, but it wasn't nothing like that. Like I said, he does that with everybody, but for some reason it just triggered when she did it. But whatever. But anyway, he never gave me a reason not to trust him, and he still don't. Even though I have gotten a whole lot better with the trust situation.
She has. I can have a password now.
He act like I just did not allow.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway,
you didn't live my life. I just want you to understand.
So, yeah, he never gave me a reason not to trust him. Like I said, we were still learning one another. We were still learning how to be married. And for me, let's talk about how I felt like, because I wanted him to act like how I was feeling towards her.
Yeah.
He's a guy. Guys don't do you not gonna do. They don't do that.
No, we
but
don't.
I wanted him to act like that towards her. And when I felt like he didn't, it was a problem.
Yeah. She wanted me to match energy. Right. My energy had to match her energy. And if my energy didn't match her energy, then that means I didn't care about her feelings. That's how you felt. And like you said, guys don't respond the same way women do. But oftentimes women look for security in a guy based off of his response. Your response tells me how you feel. That's not how men are. Men's response don't tell them how a man feels. Because a man's response is usually based off of how he's processed how he feels. I process how I feel before I respond, because I recognize if I respond as a man based off of my feelings, it's going to be way worse than a woman responding off of her feelings. As most men have gone through enough in their life to know that. And so they're not going to respond off of their feelings. They're going to have a response, but it's not going to be based off of their feelings. It's going to be based off of their processing. And like you said, it was a struggle, because you thought by me saying, no, I'm not going to do that was me saying I don't have feelings, and I don't feel like your feelings are justified. But what I was saying was your feelings are not thinking and processing after the action, after the response, after this attitude, after this neck roll and finger snap. What happens later? What does that trigger? How is that going to reciprocate in our family, in our life, in our future? But as a man, I processed all of that, and had to process you too.
Yeah, and if I could be honest, at that time, I didn't care about the after effect.
No.
The after effect, because in my mind, the after effect could have been what I wanted. She would have got mad, and she would just go away, because you were just starting just so much stuff, and I didn't think about the kids. I just wanted her to just go, but she didn't.
And the thing was, and like I told her, I was like, a lot of the stuff that was going on was stuff that if you just give it time, it was gonna fade, and that's what happened. And we just need to learn how to process through and respond differently. And like I told her too, I'm like, you have to trust the concept of, like, you're new to this dynamic, but I'm not new to handling her. I'm not new to dealing with her. And it was the same thing with you. Like, we won't say names because I don't want to, but there was one of the, fathers of your children. There, when he would reach out to you, you told me, you was like, this ain't going to be about the child. I was like, no, you need to answer him because he's asking about his child, right? And it turned out you was right. It wasn't about the child. It started that way, but it led into other things. So you knew the dynamics of the relationship. I'm new to it. And I'm assuming based off of my experience what I think is the right thing. But I had to learn to trust that even though I don't like the fact that y'all still have some type of relationship, the person that knows it best is you. And that, again, that's a struggle for trust, because now I have to trust knowing that you know what you're doing. And two, like you said, that you're not giving me anything to be jealous about, and
Right.
still being able to have some type of relationship. I
Right.
have seen in couples that have reached out to me for counseling to where they don't secure that trust. Like you said, I never gave you a reason not to trust me. But I've seen where in talking, like just saying, as if I'm talking to the husband, and the husband's telling me about how the wife still responds to her ex-husband. He's like, and I don't trust it because she still called him for everything. He still, she talks about him like he does no wrong. In my heart, I'm listening to this. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like she's still in love with him, and he's still in love with her, and he's still taking care of her. I would be jealous too. And I think sometimes people don't recognize too, with that blended family, if you have not secured a level of boundary with the, and I don't want to limit a person by calling them third party, but I guess that's the best way I can think of showing you that. I'm talking about like the marriage, the new covenant, but the person that's on the outside, the third party, right? If you have not set a proper boundary with them to where your spouse can feel trusted, it's also equally dangerous. Even if you're not doing anything, it's going to always look and feel like you are.
Right.
But in my experience, and from what I've seen, just even through the people that I've counseled, usually in those situations, that marriage doesn't last. And most of the time, it's because that person who didn't set those boundaries ended up crossing a boundary that they thought they had in place. They ended up, you know, falling in line, infidelity, whatever you want to call it. And so those boundaries are necessary because, again, like I said just recently, that was a person that at one point in your life there was some attraction there, you know. So not handling that situation with care is dangerous, and your spouse's feelings matter. You need to make them feel secure that you're able to have what's the word I want to use here? I was going to say a relationship, but a relationship that has the proper boundaries. That's the best way I can think of it right now. But you're able to do that in a way that doesn't breed distrust
Right.
or puts your family at jeopardy.
And I'm gonna also say, just looking back at everything as far as when we first got married and trying to blend our family, even though it was a lot, the mature me now is thinking this was new to everybody.
Yeah.
Not just him, not just me, but the kids, their mom, my kids' dad. This was new to everybody. So everybody had to adjust to the covenant
At one time.
at one time.
And so you think about all of these different people having different emotions, different perspectives, and different feelings that may have not been considered. And in our case, we can admit that there wasn't. It wasn't considered when we proposed and when we got married. The only feelings we considered was our own.
I see, yep.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we had a lot of chaos when we first, because we didn't sit our kids down and say, you know, hey, I them too, but we still didn't say, hey, like,
We
let's
sure
see
did.
that, you know, this is what's getting ready to happen. That's a mistake on our part. But their feelings matter. And like you said, it was new to them. And they responded in tandem. They responded like, hey, this was new. And I know, like, even the situation with their mom, she found out about us getting married when we got married. So
Yeah.
it's not like I told her. I think you did
I
tell your.
told Trey's dad that we was getting married. I ain't go. I didn't tell him for approval, but I was just kind of letting him know like it's gonna be another man around your son. Um, and even with that situation, I thank God for it because Trey's dad and my husband, they don't have no beef. They don't have no all this back and forth with. They don't. They have a. They're cordial.
Yeah,
I
we
should
have a
say.
mutual understanding.
Yes, and I love that, and that's what I've been quote unquote desiring for me and the twins' mom. Still praying, but as far as Trey's dad and my husband, I I love that they're able to communicate if they have to. Like he's come to our house. My husband has allowed him to come here to the other house that we had. Drop off gifts to Trey when it's Christmas or whatever the case is. So their relationship is
Mutual.
what I desire to have with the twins mom. We still, like I said, we're still praying. I do believe God, but I do love the relationship that y'all have.
And I think, like you said, a lot of it is just we just ain't bump heads. It's not so much that we friends because it's not that. Everybody's dynamic. I've known situations where the co-parentings they were able to become friends and they come, but that's not necessarily our case. But like you said, it's to a point where we're cordial.
Right.
We can have a conversation without it being an argument. He's been allowed to come here, and I don't say like he's disproved, but I'm saying it's to the point where I feel safe enough to trust him to come to the house. So those things are things that can transpire. In your scenario, that's not a place that you and, like you said, the twins mom are at, but y'all are at a place now to where there's been no conflict, no bumping of heads,
Right.
and a lot of even some of the little petty disagreements that may have happened, and all the things that transpired when we first met, all those things are kind of done. So it is a level of progression. Even, I think there's some grace to be had in that. Like, sometimes even if you don't have a level of you can have a mutual understanding without having even any type of interaction. I believe, and I think that's where y'all are. It's like a mutual understanding in silence. We don't have to talk to be mutually understood.
Yeah, we don't talk at all. But I will say when it comes to different things with the kids, my husband will let her know, like, I'm not gonna make a decision without talking to my wife. Like, he'll always tell her, okay, well, let me talk to my wife. Not saying he's not gonna do it, but let me talk to my wife. And so that, I guess, put me as like, I'm not, you're involving me, and you let her know that you're not gonna make a decision without talking to me first.
Yeah. It's not giving that person permission to create a space where your spouse feels excluded, right? Because at the end of the day, even though me and their mom are having a conversation about them, my wife is not excluded in that conversation just because she's not included in person. And so things like that cause my wife to feel included in every part of my life, which is important in creating balance and safety in a blended family. It's important in creating trust.
Right.
It's not about proving a point, but it's about establishing a trust, because at the end of the day, yes, me and their mom have to work things out for the betterment of their children, but that doesn't exclude me of the safety and the sanctity of my marriage and my home. And I have to bear those weights, those responsibilities. So yeah, like you said,
And we wasn't always there.
yeah, no, oh
We
no,
had to we grew there, but we wasn't always there because there was a time to where um she'll call or she'll text and I would know nothing about it. Um he wasn't hiding it, but he didn't tell me because he didn't want to deal with my mouth.
which was reckless. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So yeah, he wasn't hiding it, but he didn't tell me either, like I said, because he didn't want to deal with my reaction and why she calling you and why she always asking for this. And so we have grown to a better place.
Yeah,
We have.
you've grown, and I thank God for that, because, like you said, it's people don't recognize. Like, sometimes the way you respond to a person, it encourages their behavior. Like you said, I wouldn't hide it, but I was also afraid of telling you. And the reason why I was afraid of telling you is because there was no peace. If I told you, it was gonna be chaos. Even
Correct.
even if I told you right away, it was still gonna be chaos. And who wants that? Who wants to invite chaos, right? But I don't want to hide it, because if I hide it when you find it, then I got to deal with that. So I just didn't know what to do. So I'm just sitting over there like, Lord. And I had to I had to trust God to get us through that, and He did.
He did.
He did.
He did. Even with them coming over on the weekends, if I could be honest, I with them coming over on the weekends was a struggle for me because I knew that they had been what's the word I'm looking for? Influence about why they shouldn't like me. So when they came over, I'm like, my house is gonna be hell. My house is gonna be chaotic. Nothing is gonna
And and I want to say this: when she says chaotic, it wasn't that they were disobedient. It wasn't that they wasn't the type that caused chaos by temper tantrums. As far as like they had temper tantrums because all children do. What I mean is they wasn't like how you see on the movies where a child is just being overly bad and just throwing things. It wasn't that. What it was more so, it was like an inward rebellion where they would shut down. Um,
They
they would
wouldn't
get
listen.
attitudes. They
Yeah.
wouldn't listen. Stuff that kids do, but it was to a degree that was just like you could tell it was something triggering it. And it was like no matter what I did, no matter discipline didn't work, conversation didn't work, none of these things worked. And that's when we started saying, okay, is it outside influence? And it was a struggle because she was already struggling with it. This thing it was like, okay, why are we going through this? And I'm struggling with, I don't want to lose this relationship, but I'm trying to make this work, but I don't know what to do. And it came to a point where I had to shut everything down. I had to sit them down, and we had to have a conversation. And it was a very teary night because they were crying, I was crying, she was crying, because we was like, okay, what did we? I asked them, I was like, I can tell you don't like her. Tell me what she did. Let's run through the list. What did she do? And we went through that whole process. And it wasn't nothing really said that she did. They couldn't explain it, and that's how I knew they were harboring emotions and feelings towards her that weren't justified based off of an experience. But I didn't ignore their feelings. We addressed it as a family without making them feel like they were victims and without making them feel like they were the villains either. We just had a conversation, and I told them to embrace. I told them to hug her. I said, you got to let this go. She didn't do it. I said, if you mad at me because of her, then be mad at me, but don't be mad at her. And we kind of walked through that, and we took that moment. I think was a breaking point. It didn't
Yeah.
immediately get better.
No, it didn't immediately, but it did get better over time. One of the things that they said to you that will always stick with me, um, you asked them, why don't you like Ivy? And their response was, because mommy doesn't like her. And when they said that, I'm like, so it's not them. It's, but like I said, it's their mom. They're boys. Boys tend to cling to their mom a whole lot more than they do their father. So it was just like, I didn't know what to do because it's like, how can I change that?
And the reality of it was, and I want to say this too because they said mommy didn't like her, but they didn't say mommy told us not to like her. They just said because mommy didn't like her. So it's not that when we say she influenced them, not saying she directly, we don't know. It could have been, but it's not that we have evidence that she was speaking like you need to hate her. It could have just been that she was just verbally, in talking to somebody else in the house, not talking to them, explaining her distrust or dislike about it, right? But the kids see that, and that's their influence.
Right.
And I think that is what matriculated into them, okay, my mom is my mom. No matter what she does, a boy gonna love his mom.
Right.
And anything that hurt his mom hurts them. And for them, she hurt mom. That's just the reality. And having to reprogram and re-educate is tough.
Yeah. Because especially when you know you didn't do anything. Me and the mom didn't have no interact, like nothing. It's just, I guess, because you.
I mean, I
You
don't.
got married.
I don't even. I think it was. I think it wasn't so much that you, because y'all, like I said, that's why I said it wasn't really chaos. Because like you said, y'all didn't really have a interaction. It's not like y'all got on the phone and had it out. What it was is, like you said, you wanted me to say certain things. I didn't want to say them, but I did have to articulate your feelings. And she wasn't used to having to worry about nobody else's feelings because there was never any situation that I was in prior to you that was serious enough,
Right.
right? And I think what happened was in the midst of those conversations, that's where the distrust, the dislike was brooded between the two of y'all. And it wasn't so much that y'all had such a serious one-on-one, but me mediating terribly created enough of a distance and dislike. And anybody who, if you grow up and you're not saved or whatever, if you dislike a person, you tell everybody you don't like them, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's how it is. And you know, like you said, more mature, more mindful. These are things that happens to everybody. It just happened to happen to us, and the way we processed it and the way we went through it also matriculated. And it took years to reciprocate those moments to bring a peace back to our home. But the one thing I commend you for is even though it wasn't comfortable, you kept trying. I thank you for that. You know, because you could have said this enough. You was like, I didn't sign up for this. You know, because I think at one time I think you did say it, but you stayed anyway. But yeah,
And it's like in the middle of us going through this, blending our families, Trey and the twins, they were fine. They didn't
perfect.
know. They run around the house,
Brothers loving
they fighting,
each other.
playing the game. We in the room fussing. They don't have a clue of what's going on because they're kids. They were just, I'm ready to see the boys. I'm ready to see Trey.
Yep.
And they were just doing whatever they do in the room or whatever. They didn't have a care in the world.
And I think I love that, but that also speaks to another concept. Like our kids got along well, we struggled.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
our kids were
Yeah.
fine. Them being like in some scenarios now, some blended families, the kids struggle blending together, but our kids didn't struggle blending together with each other. They struggled with us blending together. They struggled. Like Trey was fine with me, but the boys struggled with her because of the situation. And then there was a moment I think where it wasn't long, but Trey brought up the conversation about being raised outside the home.
Yeah, he had some questions as far as why me and his daddy didn't make it.
And also why he wasn't living with us and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but there wasn't like a lot, and you know the twins they never really brought it up, but we've had to have I've had that conversation with them, um, and you know we you have to deal with those things because they even if they never ask, they wonder it, they think about it,
Yeah.
right? And so I've had to have that conversation with them. She's had a conversation with Trey, and you know me and Trey have had conversations on our own about, I guess, what it looks like with us. And like I said, with me with Trey, my thing was I established with him, like I understand how your granddaddy raises you. I understand how your daddy raises you. I said, you know, but I'm me. And I'm gonna have my standards, my rules, and I'm like, I don't have no problem with what anybody else lets you do, but when you come in my environment in my house, then you live by my rules. And he was okay with that. And I told my wife, I said, when it comes to the twins, I give you full on permission to do the same thing. Because a child, they're not going to respect a boundary that you never put in place. And I said, if you put a boundary in place, my job is to enforce that boundary. But I can't enforce a boundary you never set.
Right.
And I said, I can set a boundary for you, but they're not going to respect that boundary in my absence because I put it there and not you. But if you put it there and I enforce it, then when I'm not there, they'll respect it because you put it there. And they'll recognize they can't cross it because you established it. If I establish it, then as long as I'm absent, they'll feel like they can cross it. So
We had to work through that as well.
Yeah.
'Cause even when we was, my husband would be at work and I'd be home with the kids. It had got bad to where like they wasn't so. I'll give about 7 to 8. They'd be over at the house. They wouldn't even ask me for nothing to eat. They would ask me for nothing to drink. Like we would have no communication. And I'm like, I know they hungry, and I will offer them, but they'll tell me no. But when AC got off, they're starving. They come and ask AC, can Daddy, can I have this and can I have that? I'm like, you could have had anything in this house, but because I guess that level of trust wasn't there, they didn't want to bother me. I didn't want to be bothered, and it was just like,
and they can feel that.
yeah,
They
it's
can
like
feel
even though I didn't want to be bothered, I was still gonna feed you. I'm not gonna not feed you, and you can have anything in this house. But I guess they didn't feel comfortable at that time because we had so much going on. And like I said before, in my mind, I'm just like, I don't gotta deal with this, like, cause these ain't mine. They ain't here. I don't gotta deal with this. But like you said, they felt that. And I didn't, me being young, I didn't take that into consideration. I could have done more on my part, but I didn't because I was young and I was immature.
But I mean, did not saying that the immaturity part, plays a part in everybody's life. So it's like the one thing you can't do is you can't hold yourself hostage to the mistakes that you have made, but you do grow from them, you learn from them, and that's one thing that you did do. and I commend you for that. It wasn't you didn't stay in that state, and I had to learn to give you a level of grace too, because like you said, it wasn't on you alone. It wasn't that you didn't want to feed them.
Right.
It was just that there was so much. They struggled with trusting, you struggled with loving, and I had to figure out how to put those pieces together. And I'm big on when I get to a point and I feel like I need to drive home, I'm gonna drive home, and that for me is big because I feel like some man needs to hear this. You know, there was no space of me just saying, "Well, they got to figure this out." Now that was part of my responsibility to make this work. I knew that there was something clashing between my wife and the children that I was raising. I knew that she struggled with loving them, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't really know how to package it. They struggled with loving her, not because they didn't want to, but because of the trauma that they've been through, the experiences that they had. And I had a responsibility as a man to take care of my household, to go to work, to go to church, but to also make sure that I'm mending that part of our relationship. And it took time, but every day I had to keep working at it, keep going through the emotions while dealing with my emotions. Because you don't think I'll come home frustrated? Why are they still hungry? But then when I'm listening and I had to discern that my wife was not evil, not mistreating them. I had to discern these things and trust her that this is not the case. Now, they never accused her of anything. But what I'm saying is these are patterns because your emotions want to tell you there's no way.
Right.
But reality has to set in like, yeah, it's possible, not because the child is trying to be evil, but like you said, it was a trust thing. You could offer and they could tell you no, what you can't force them to eat.
Right.
And it's not that you just okay, well, they're not hungry. And then when I get hungry, they're hungry. That's a trust thing. That's something else. We got to deal with that. So, anything else you want to add about blended family before we wrap this session up?
Not really. We unpacked a lot. It's probably more. Probably what it is. We could go deeper.
Yeah.
We really can. But that's for another time because we got something coming. But as far as now, I don't think I have anything.
Okay. Well, since she put it out there, we'll go ahead and let the people know. Go ahead and get ready to mark your calendars. We'll set the date and we'll put it out there in a while. But we're getting ready to put together a tour and an event that we're getting ready to host. The first ever official Undefiled live event. So get ready to mark your calendars for that. We'll be unpacking. How people talk about some of the worst years of marriage is the first 5 years. So we're going to start, it's going to be an event centered around marriage, of course, but we're going to be going into some detail, kind of like we did tonight with this topic of blended family. But we're going to talk about what it was like. We're going to go all the way back to when we first met, y'all. We're going to talk about the dating phase and
What he did to me.
No, I didn't do nothing to you.
Oh, okay.
Don't end the video like that. I didn't do nothing.
Just wait on the tour. We'll unpack it all.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell it.
Yeah, ain't nothing to tell. Ain't nothing to tell.
Oh, okay.
All right, we got to, apparently we got to work this out because you ain't getting on the stage and embarrassing me. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Well, yeah, we're excited to be doing this and going on tour, and I'm just excited about what God is doing and has done. So just be on the lookout.
All right. But until next time, man, thank y'all for tuning in into this back for the first time
Right.
official podcast. We're going to make a commitment, man, to be more consistent with these and keep these coming and keep these pumping out. We thank y'all for tuning in. I'm AC.
I'm Ivy.
And we are Undefiled. Until next time, God bless.